Hello, General Biology. This is the Basics of DNA Part 2, and we're going to get started. So, we're studying DNA because the genes in DNA determine our proteins, and the proteins determine our traits. And so, if we want to study all of the differences amongst living things on the planet, we got to study proteins because proteins are what make our life work, and it's what make us different. So, I'm going to teach you about three different categories of proteins. The first are enzymes. Enzymes are responsible for any traits that have to do with body chemistry. And then we have receptors. Receptors are responsible for any traits that have to do with sensing and responding to the environment. So they're responsible for our senses. Then we have structural proteins. And structural proteins are building materials for for our cells and body. So literally what we're made of from top to bottom. Well, those proteins work together, and there are two vocabulary terms related to them. Those vocabulary terms are genotypes and phenotypes. Genotypes are the genes an individual has, and phenotypes are the trait that that individual shows. So there could be a couple of different gene combinations that give us the same trait. So, for instance, over here we've got these genes giving us this purple phenotype, and then over here we have these genes giving us that purple phenotype, and then over here we have these genes giving us this white phenotype. So those are the genes we have and the phenotypes we show. So phenotype is determined by genotype in the environment. So if we look at these plants here and these plants here, they may have the exact same genetics, but these plants down here are growing in a warmer climate. They're getting more water. It's a nicer temperature. Over here, it's a colder climate. They're not getting as good sunlight, and it's cold. A lot of the water is ice. It's not as easy for them to use. So they don't grow as tall. So the phenotype, the trait that they have, their height, is determined by their genotype and the environment. Now we're going to divide our genes into two categories. We have single gene traits and polygenic traits. Single gene traits are determined by one gene. There can be a few alleles. We'll talk about those later. But they generally have three or fewer phenotypes. Examples here are the cleft chin and the widow peak, the earlobe type, and being able to roll your tongue. These things, in class, we discussed dimples and PTC tasting. Polygenic traits, on the other hand, are determined by many genes, and they have a spectrum of phenotypes. These are things like human skin tone and height. Finally, humans share their genes with other species. For example, 98.8% of our DNA is the same in chimps. 90% of our DNA is the same in cats, 80% in cows, and 60% in bananas. So I'm going to stop here, and then we'll do the review in part 3. I hope this helps. Struggle well.